In the quiet green hills of Mbale, there lived a young woman named Naledi. Her beauty was the kind that made people stop and stare. Soft brown skin that glowed in the sun, eyes like still water, and a smile that could silence even the loudest market. Word of her beauty spread like wildfire. Men came from faraway villages just to catch a glimpse of her. Some brought gifts, baskets of fruit, silk scarves, even goats, hoping she would notice them. But Naledi never seemed impressed. She would smile politely, thank them, and return to her garden. Many said she was proud, but the truth was different. Naledi often sat under the big baobab tree and told the younger girls, "Beauty is not a blessing, it's a test. If you're not careful, people will love your face but forget your soul." She didn't want a man who loved her looks. She wanted someone who saw her heart. Deep down, she feared being chosen for the wrong reason. So she waited. Not for the richest man. Not for the most handsome. But for the one who could see past her beauty and into the woman she truly was. One sunny afternoon, a shiny black car rolled into Mbale Hills, something the villagers rarely saw. Out stepped a tall, well-dressed man named Tumalo. He was a merchant from the city, known for his big businesses, expensive clothes, and smooth words. But he didn't come to trade. He came for Naledi. He had heard stories of the village rose whose beauty made hearts stop, and now he had come to claim her. Tumalo walked straight to Naledi's father's compound, carrying a box filled with gold bracelets, perfumes, and city-made cloths that sparkled in the sun. He knelt before her father and said with a wide smile, "I've traveled far to find the most beautiful woman in this land. I want to marry Naledi." The villagers gasped. Women whispered. Men shook their heads in disbelief. Naledi didn't say a word at first. She just stood still, watching Tumalo with calm, steady eyes. He looked confident, certain that his wealth and charm had already won her over. Her father looked at Naledi, unsure. After a long pause, she simply said, "If that is his wish, let him wait 3 weeks. If he stays, maybe I'll believe he's serious." Tumalo agreed without hesitation. And in those 3 weeks, he showered the family with gifts, helped at the farm just to impress her father, and walked with Naledi through the hills, telling her stories of city life, his mansion, his cars, and all the luxury she could enjoy as his wife. Naledi listened quietly, nodding sometimes but never smiling too wide. She was still watching, still measuring the man who claimed to love her. 3 weeks later, the wedding was held under the biggest tree in Mbale. Drums played, food was shared, guests came from far and wide. But in the middle of all the dancing and celebration, Naledi stood beside Tumalo in her beaded dress, silent, thoughtful, her eyes holding a secret, like she already knew that this wasn't just a wedding. It was the beginning of a test. The night before the wedding, when the village had gone quiet and only the crickets and night wind filled the air, Naledi and Tumalo sat together under the moonlight. The ceremony was only hours away, and everyone was already calling her the city wife. Tumalo looked at her with pride in his eyes, admiring her beauty like she was a prize he had won. But Naledi was not smiling. She looked at him with eyes full of calm and said something that made the wind pause. "I'm not the kind of wife you think I'll be," she whispered gently. "If beauty is the reason you chose me, then I hope you pass the test." Tumalo chuckled and pulled her closer. "Ah, Naledi," he said, "you like to speak in riddles. But don't worry, you're already my queen." He kissed her hand, thinking it was just cold feet or village wisdom talking. To him, it was nothing serious, just a woman being dramatic the night before her big day. But Naledi didn't laugh. She just looked away and whispered again, this time more to herself, "Let's see if you really came for me, or just the face I wear." Inside her heart, she already knew what city men could be like. They were drawn to beauty like moths to fire, until the light dimmed or another flame appeared. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't bitter. She was just aware. That night, while Tumalo slept like a man confident in love, Naledi sat awake by the window, looking out at the hills of her childhood. She thought of the girls who were told their worth depended on their looks, the women who were left when they no longer looked like wedding photos. Naledi knew her beauty had opened the door, but only time would reveal what Tumalo truly saw when he looked at her. This marriage wasn't just a new beginning. It was a test she had quietly prepared. And now it was about to begin. The journalist sat across from Naledi in the garden behind the True Mirror Center. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where the breeze gently plays with your hair, and the scent of wildflowers fills the air. The young woman interviewing her had a notepad balanced on her knee, and eyes wide with curiosity. She had heard so much about Naledi, the woman who turned heartbreak into healing for an entire village. Now she wanted to hear the truth straight from her lips. She leaned forward slightly and asked, "If you could say anything to your ex-husband today, what would it be?" Naledi didn't flinch. She didn't shift in her seat. She just smiled. Not with bitterness, not with regret, but with peace. Then she said calmly, "Thank you for revealing yourself. I needed truth more than love." There was silence for a moment. Even the wind seemed to pause. Naledi looked out at the field where a group of young girls were painting under a tree. "When someone shows you who they truly are," she said softly, "believe them the first time. I used to think love could fix anything, that if you were beautiful enough, loyal enough, quiet enough, it would make someone stay. But the truth? The truth sets you free." She paused, her eyes shining not with tears but with strength. "He didn't destroy me. He showed me where I needed to rebuild. And for that, I'm grateful." The journalist swallowed hard, not sure what to say. She had expected anger. She had expected drama. But what she got was grace. And as Naledi stood up and walked toward the children, calling out, "Okay, my stars, let's clean up," the journalist realized she wasn't just writing a story. She was witnessing a woman who had chosen purpose over pain, truth over comfort, and become unstoppable. It started with late nights. At first, Tumalo would say he had meetings or business dinners. Naledi believed him, or at least she tried to. She would wait up, sitting on the edge of the bed in her silk nightdress, the city lights blinking through the window. But soon the excuses became too many, and the hours stretched longer. Then came the whispers. A neighbor mentioned seeing Tumalo at a restaurant with his assistant, their hands too close on the table. A friend dropped hints about a waitress who seemed a little too familiar with him. And the worst? Naledi overheard someone at a party say Tumalo had been seen laughing too freely with his friend's wife. Naledi didn't argue. She didn't cry or scream. She simply watched. When Tumalo left, she cleaned the house in silence. When he returned, she greeted him with a soft smile, served his food, and listened to his made-up stories. But inside, her heart was sinking like a stone in deep water. One day, while doing laundry, a message popped up on his forgotten phone. She didn't mean to look, but the words burned into her eyes. "Last night was perfect. She'll never know." Her hands trembled. Her chest felt heavy. But she didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, Naledi began smiling more, but with emptier eyes. She began watching him like a quiet storm waiting. Every lie he told, every perfume that wasn't hers, every sudden shower after a late night, she remembered it all. People in the city still admired her. Always dressed so well, always so calm. They said she was lucky to have such a handsome, wealthy husband. But they didn't see the truth behind her soft smiles. Naledi wasn't clueless. She wasn't weak. She was patient because a part of her already knew. Tumalo didn't just fail her heart. He was failing the test he never realized she had given him from the start. Naledi sat alone one evening, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She no longer recognized the woman looking back. Her eyes were tired, her smile forced. She had given everything to Tumalo, her heart, her silence, her patience. And still he chose lies. That night, something inside her shifted. She didn't cry. She didn't break things. She simply picked up her phone and created a new account. She gave herself a different name, Zuri. She used a filtered photo, one that looked nothing like her real self but was still beautiful enough to catch a wandering eye. A few clicks, a few posts, and the fake profile was ready. Then with a deep breath she sent Tumalo a message. Just a simple hello smiley face. He replied within 5 minutes. Naledi's heart sank, but she kept going. Every day, Zuri would chat with him. Tumalo was playful, flirty, full of charm. The same charm that once swept Naledi off her feet. He told Zuri she was refreshing, that she made him feel alive. He never mentioned his wife. Not once. He asked Zuri to send pictures. Naledi did. Ones that weren't her, but close enough to pass. Tumalo never noticed. He didn't ask real questions. He just chased the illusion. At night, Naledi would lie next to him, pretending to sleep while his phone buzzed with messages from the woman he didn't know was her. The hardest part? Reading the things he said about her, about herself. "My wife is beautiful," he wrote, "but she's boring. Always serious. I want someone fun. Someone who listens. Naledi read those words with shaking hands. It wasn't just about cheating. It was about how little he saw her. How little he valued the woman behind the face. But she didn't stop. This wasn't revenge. It was truth-seeking. It was the test. The one she had warned him about the night before their wedding. And now the test had truly begun. Tumalo was lying in bed beside Naledi one evening, laughing quietly at his phone while she pretended to be asleep. The room was dark except for the soft blue glow from his screen. Naledi's back was turned, but her eyes were open, wide awake, heart pounding. Later that night, when he finally drifted off to sleep, she tiptoed to the living room with her own phone. She opened the fake account, the one he knew as Zuri, and scrolled through their latest chat. Her hands trembled as she read his words. "My wife is beautiful," he had written, "but she's boring. She doesn't excite me. She's always so serious. I want someone different. Someone who understands me." Naledi stared at the message. The pain was sharp, like a knife twisting inside her chest. She read it again. And again. Every word felt like a slap. So this is what he thought of her? After everything, the silence she had kept, the smile she had forced, the love she had continued to give, she was just boring to him. A woman who had left her village, her peace, her entire world to be his wife. And still she wasn't enough. Tears filled her eyes but none fell. Her heartbreak was quiet. She replied as Zuri, still keeping up the act, still testing. "That's sad," she wrote. "Do you think you'll ever leave her?" Tumalo responded within seconds. "Maybe. I don't know. I'm just tired. I want to feel alive again." Naledi closed the chat and placed the phone on the table. Her breath was heavy. Her hands were cold. It wasn't just that he was unfaithful. It was that he had reduced her to a face. A decoration. Something pretty but replaceable. That night, Naledi didn't sleep. She sat by the window until the sun came up, her heart in pieces, but her spirit slowly rising. The truth hurt, but it also opened her eyes. The test she had spoken of, he was failing. And now she knew what she had to do. A few days after Tumalo had poured his heart out to Zuri, not knowing he was speaking to his own wife, Naledi decided it was time to end the test. She had seen enough. The messages, the lies, the confessions, they had all cut deep. But this last move would give her the answer she needed, once and for all. So, through the fake account, she sent him a message. "There's a place I've always wanted to visit. Riverstone Lodge. Quiet. Private. Just you and me. Let's spend the weekend together. I want to give you what your wife can't." It didn't take long for Tumalo to reply. "Say no more," he wrote, followed by a winking emoji. "I'll book it." The day arrived. Tumalo checked into Riverstone Lodge, his heart racing with excitement. He had shaved, sprayed his best cologne, and even bought a new shirt. He thought he was about to meet a beautiful stranger, a woman who saw him as charming and desirable, someone who wasn't boring like his wife. He had no idea that the stranger he was meeting was no stranger at all. The hotel staff handed him the room key. Suite 308. He took the elevator up, whistling to himself, adjusting his collar, imagining how the night would unfold. The moment he reached the door, he paused, took a deep breath, and smiled. Then he opened it. Candles flickered softly around the room. Rose petals lined the floor, leading toward the balcony. The lights were dim, the air warm and scented. At first, Tumalo grinned, thinking Zuri had really gone all out. But then he saw her. Standing in the middle of the room was Naledi, dressed in full traditional attire from Bale Hills, her head held high, her eyes calm but filled with something deeper, something final. Tumalo froze. The color drained from his face. "Naledi," he choked out, taking a step back. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She only looked at him and said softly, "You failed." Tumalo opened his mouth, searching for words, excuses, explanations. But nothing came. Naledi stepped forward, her voice steady. "I warned you before we married. If beauty was the only reason you chose me, you'd be tested. I needed to know if you loved me, or just the face I wear." He dropped to his knees. "I didn't know. I thought, please." Naledi shook her head slowly. "This wasn't to punish you. This was to see you clearly. And now I do." She turned toward the door, the roses brushing against her feet, her back straight like a woman no longer carrying someone else's lies. The room was silent. Only Tumalo's shaky breath remained. The game was over. And the truth stood tall in the dress of a village girl, stronger than ever before. Tumalo sat on the edge of the hotel bed, his head in his hands, still trying to process what had just happened. The room was quiet now, except for the soft flicker of candlelight. Naledi stood near the door, her hands folded in front of her, steady and calm. There were no more games. No lies left, only the truth. I didn't do this because I wanted to hurt you, she said softly, her voice steady but full of emotion. I tested your loyalty, not because I doubted you, but because I needed to know what you really saw when you looked at me. Tumalo looked up at her, eyes full of shame. He tried to speak, but Naledi held up her hand gently. I have lived in your house like a shadow. You introduced me to your friends like a prize from a village, something to show off. You never asked what I felt, what I dreamed about, what I missed. You just smiled, as if my face was all I had to offer. She stepped closer, her eyes locked onto his. But I am more than my skin. More than the dress you picked out for me. I wanted to believe that behind your promises, there was love. Real love. But when I became someone else online, you didn't just flirt. You told her everything I longed to hear from you. Everything you never said to me. Tumalo's voice cracked as he whispered, I didn't know. I didn't think. That's the problem, Naledi said gently. You never thought. You never looked deeper. You saw beauty and thought it was enough. But I needed to know if you saw me. My heart, my soul, my worth. She paused, then added, now I know the truth. And it hurts. But it also sets me free. There was nothing more to say. The room that was supposed to be filled with secret passion had turned into a place of painful honesty. And Naledi, once silent and unsure, now stood in her full power, choosing truth over illusion and dignity over deception. Tumalo dropped to his knees, his voice trembling, his eyes filled with regret. Naledi, please. I made a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't know it was you. Please forgive me. His hands reached out, but she didn't move. She just looked at him, calm, quiet, and strangely at peace. She didn't shout. She didn't cry. Instead, she gave a small, almost sad smile. Tumalo, this was never about revenge, she said softly. This wasn't a trap. It was a mirror. I needed to see who you truly were when you thought I wasn't watching. He kept pleading. I love you. I was confused. I'll change. Just give me another chance. Naledi shook her head slowly. You say you love me, but love isn't proven in flowers or gold or sweet words. It's proven in the small moments, in loyalty, in listening, in respect. And you showed me what lives in your heart when you thought no one was watching. She looked around the room, the candles, the roses, the lies. Then back at him. This wasn't a punishment. It was clarity. And now that I have it, I know where to go. Tumalo's voice broke. Don't leave me. Please. But Naledi had already made her choice. She stepped away from him, her movements graceful, her head held high. I gave you all of me, and you only held on to what you could show off. Now that I know the truth, I don't need to stay where I'm only seen, not known. She walked to the door, paused, and turned one last time. You didn't lose me because I stopped loving you. You lost me because you never truly saw me. Then she opened the door and walked out, leaving behind the room, the lies, and the man who never passed the test. What Tumalo thought was just a game had become his greatest loss. And what Naledi thought was heartbreak had become her freedom. When Naledi returned to their apartment the next day, she didn't stay long. She moved quietly through the space. The same space that once felt like a castle but had slowly turned into a cage. The jewelry boxes sat untouched on the dresser. Expensive gowns hung perfectly in the closet. Perfume she never chose lined the shelves. All the gifts Tumalo had given her, all the things he thought would make her feel loved, she left them all behind. She packed only a small bag, a few clothes, her favorite book from Bale Hills, and a photo of her late mother. Everything else stayed, not out of anger, but because she didn't need them. They were never really hers. They belonged to the version of Naledi Tumalo had tried to create, silent, pretty, easy to display. But that version no longer existed. Before she closed the door for the last time, she took one last walk through the apartment. She touched the walls gently, whispered a quiet goodbye, and placed a single note on the bed, the same bed where she had once waited for him to come home. The note read, "Real beauty is invisible, and so is trust until it's broken." No signature. No explanation. Just the truth. When Tumalo returned and found the empty apartment, he called her name, searched every room and finally saw the note. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding it in his shaking hands, and for the first time he realized what he had really lost. Naledi wasn't angry. She was awakened. She didn't need revenge. She needed peace. And now, with her heart clear and her soul free, she walked away from the glitter, the noise and the lies, not because she had nothing left, but because she had finally found herself. The exit wasn't loud. It was quiet, graceful and full of power. Just like Naledi. Naledi returned to Mbale Hills not as the village beauty people once whispered about, but as a woman who had seen the world and healed from it. The sun felt warmer, the hills greener, and the wind softer on her skin. She walked through the same path she once played on as a girl, but now with a heart full of purpose. She didn't come back to hide. She came back to build. With the little savings she had and the support of a few elders who believed in her, Naledi opened a small center near the village square. It wasn't fancy, just a simple building with bright colors, handmade benches, and walls covered in paintings made by little hands. She called it the True Mirror. It quickly became a safe place for young girls from all over Mbale and nearby villages. Girls who had been called too dark, too quiet, too plain, or only pretty came to the center to laugh, learn, and grow. Naledi taught them storytelling, painting, poetry, and how to speak up for themselves. But most importantly, she taught them this: your worth is not in your looks. It's in your heart, your dreams, and your voice. She would stand in front of the class, her voice soft but strong, and say, when you look in the mirror, don't just see your face. Ask yourself, do I know who I am inside? Word spread fast. Mothers brought their daughters. Fathers came to thank her. Even elders who once judged her for turning down suitors now nodded with respect when she passed. Naledi didn't talk much about her life in the city. She didn't need to. Her strength spoke for itself. What was once a heartbreak had become her mission. What was once silence had turned into a movement. And in that small center on a hill, surrounded by giggles, stories, and bold dreams, Naledi found something even more powerful than love. She found purpose. And that was the real beginning. The journalist sat across from Naledi in the garden behind the True Mirror Center. It was a quiet afternoon, the kind where the breeze gently plays with your hair, and the scent of wildflowers fills the air. The young woman interviewing her had a notepad balanced on her knee, and eyes wide with curiosity. She had heard so much about Naledi, the woman who turned heartbreak into healing for an entire village. Now she wanted to hear the truth straight from her lips. She leaned forward slightly and asked, if you could say anything to your ex-husband today, what would it be? Naledi didn't flinch. She didn't shift in her seat. She just smiled. Not with bitterness, not with regret, but with peace. Then she said calmly, thank you for revealing yourself. I needed truth more than love. There was silence for a moment. Even the wind seemed to pause. Naledi looked out at the field where a group of young girls were painting under a tree. When someone shows you who they truly are, she said softly, believe them the first time. I used to think love could fix anything, that if you were beautiful enough, loyal enough, quiet enough, it would make someone stay. But the truth? The truth sets you free. She paused, her eyes shining not with tears but with strength. He didn't destroy me. He showed me where I needed to rebuild. And for that, I'm grateful. The journalist swallowed hard, not sure what to say. She had expected anger. She had expected drama. But what she got was grace. And as Naledi stood up and walked toward the children, calling out, okay, my stars, let's clean up, the journalist realized she wasn't just writing a story. She was witnessing a woman who had chosen purpose over pain, truth over comfort, and become unstoppable. Naledi's final blog post went live on a quiet Sunday morning, but within hours it had spread like wildfire. Thousands of women across the continent shared it with captions like, read this twice, and this healed something in me. The title alone stopped people in their tracks. He married me for beauty, but I was testing his loyalty. In the post, Naledi didn't rant. She didn't curse his name or play the victim. She simply told the truth, raw, honest, and full of grace. I loved him, she wrote, with everything I had. But I needed to know if he saw more than my face, more than the praise I got at parties. I needed to know if he saw my soul. She described how she created a fake online persona. Not to trap him but to reveal him. What I found, she wrote, broke my heart in a way I didn't know was possible. But it also gave me the clarity I needed. I wasn't losing love. I was losing a lie. Her final words left readers in tears. I walked away not empty but full. Full of truth, full of purpose, and full of peace. Because sometimes the last page of one story is the first step into becoming who you were always meant to be. And just like that, her journey, once marked by betrayal, ended with a legacy of healing, strength, and a reminder that real love starts with knowing your own worth.